Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hi-Fi Preschool and Kids Weekly Training Podcast. Do you know what today is? Or actually, should I say, do you know what this week is? This week is Hooray Day and Game Changer.
Woo!
And I want everyone to say hooray because joining me this week is the one, the only Crystal Mazuka. Crystal, how are you doing this week?
I am doing so good. The sun is shining, birds are singing, my heart is happy. So,
There are birds singing with me today, but I think it's because they built a nest right above my desk in my attic, and I can just hear
ooh.
them all day. So birds are singing,
Mm.
but not in the way that I would quite enjoy. Well, this week we are celebrating because it is a Hooray Day game changer. It is a fifth week of Hi-Fi. So we like to do things a little bit special on these weeks. So this is going to be that big gospel focused week where you can invite kids, you can invite preschoolers that maybe have never been to church before, and we can explain, we can show them the gospel and why is it important for them and how their identity is based in who God is. And this week we are saying that God says you matter. And we are going to be looking at two stories from scripture. We are going to be looking at Genesis 1 through 2 and Psalm 139. But before we jump into that, we like to have a question at the beginning that you can use yourself on a Sunday. So maybe if you have a first time guest, these are some fun questions that you can use just to kind of break the ice, get to know them a little bit better before we start teaching. So, Crystal, question for you.
Yes,
What
I'm ready.
what is a fun fact about yourself? Fun fact in quotation marks. Fun fact about yourself that people are often surprised to learn.
So I had to think a lot about this because I I have people tell me all the time that I've lived a lot of life. Like
That's true.
there's just so much. And so I think one fun fact that people don't often know, and Isaac, I don't even know if you know this. I actually wrote and self-published a Christian young adult fiction book. Um,
I'm surprised and a little upset that I haven't read it.
Yes, you could get it on Kindle if you want. It's called Spooky. And I feel like I want to share a little bit about like the reason why it even happened is that I don't know if I've mentioned this on the podcast before. I am a cancer survivor, actually three times over cancer survivor. And when I got sick the second time, I genuinely was just not sure if I was going to make it or not. I had written this story. I've always loved writing stories. And so I decided, you know what? If I'm not going to make it, I kind of want to leave something behind. And so I pushed to get that book published. And in my mind, I had three books. I could still even tell you what happens in book number two and three. But now that I am no longer thinking he like going through this terrible time in my life. I just haven't had ever had the motivation to write them. I mean, and this was, you got to know, this was like 13, 14 years ago. This was it's been a minute. And so I don't even know if I could write a book again, but all that to say, yeah, I think people are often surprised when they discover that. Are you trying to look it up right now?
The paperback is on its way.
No, it is not. You did not.
Yes, I just found a copy off of Amazon, and it is a 4.5 out of 5 stars. So well done, Crystal. Well done. That is a
Oh,
great
thank
fun
you.
fact. That is a great fun fact. All right. Well, I don't even want to share a fun fact now because that's such a great.
Wait a second. Wait a second. Does everybody know that you're like, aren't you sponsored in disc golf now?
I'm semi-sponsored. Like
I don't I think that's a fun fact that people know you're
sure.
into disc golf,
Yes, they know
but I
I'm
don't
a
think they know how into disc golf you are.
I am I by an apparel company. I am sponsored in disc golf. Yes, that is accurate. Yes. So
That's a
yeah, so
really
that is a
you're
fun
not it's
fact.
not a brag. It's not a brag. It's just a fun fact. I think it just shows how into the game you are, how into the sport you are.
I do love disc golf a lot. That is a fun fact for sure. Well, as we are talking about how God says you matter, we are going to be looking at the passages from Genesis chapter 1 and 2 and from Psalm 139. And you might be thinking, wait, what? How do these connect? Well, as we are talking about how God made us special this last month, we really want to show how we matter to Him. So, as we look at Genesis chapter 1 and 2, we are going to be looking at the story of creation, how God spoke things into being, and how God looked at them and said that they are good, but how he took the time and how he created man, how he created woman. He intentionally made them not like everything else, but how he made them in his image. So we're going to start at the very beginning of how God made people special, set apart, and how he says that they matter to him because they were made in his image. And that's something that we can celebrate now, because then as we go to Psalm 139 and we see how God says that we were created in our mother's womb, how from the very beginning, before our first breath, he knew us and that we are wondrously and remarkably made. What an amazing story how that we can show to preschoolers and kids to say, hey, before you were born, before your mommy and daddy knew who you were, maybe before you even had a name, God knew you. God knew who you are now. He knows who you are going to grow up to be. And on top of all of that, he says that you matter to him. And that's such an amazing truth, because as we discover through Hi-Fi who God is, who more about God's character, we learn more about who he made us to be. So, as we look at God as the creator, as the maker, as being intentional, as not being flippant with the things that he
Mm,
creates, but being very
mhm,
specific, as we learn that about God, we can celebrate that, oh, that applies to me because that means I matter to him. That means that
mhm.
I am important to him. And that means that I am special to God. So, Crystal, I want to ask you, how are we connecting this Bible story of Genesis 1 through 2 and Psalm 139 to God's plan to rescue us from sin?
I love this so much, and getting to work on this Bible story and this week was such a joy because it is so great for preschoolers and kids to learn that God's not lonely.
Hmm.
God does not need people. God doesn't he's not lacking in anything. The fact that he made us was just an overflow of his love. And he loves us so much. We matter to him so much that he did not want to leave us stuck in our sin and separated from him. And so he created us on purpose and for a purpose. He made us special. Like you said, Isaac, he knit us together. And when sin breaks our relationship with him, he doesn't just say, well, never mind. Like, I tried, I give up, I gave my best, whatever. And he also doesn't say, no, I need you. I need you with me. I'm incomplete without you. No, he just says, listen, I made you and I love you so much. You matter to me so much that I am going to send my one and only son to take the punishment for your sin and make the way for us to have a relationship now and for forever. This idea of connecting God creating us and salvation with the fact that we matter to him. I just love that. Again, he God doesn't need us. He wants us. And it's just such a great thing that we're going to get to teach preschoolers and kids this week. And I think that they're going to have so much fun discovering this through the idea that God made me and he made me for a relationship with him. And when that relationship got broken, he then stepped in and made the way for that relationship to happen again because I matter to God.
That is so exciting. And I mean, that is why we're here to tell these kids
Hmm.
that, hey, they matter enough for God to send his son so that to make a way for us to have a relationship with him. That is exciting. And I can't wait to do that now this Sunday because you've regalvanized my excitement for it.
Woo! It is one of my working geniuses is
Oh,
galvanizing. So
absolutely. Absolutely. All right. Last question. What encouragement can we as leaders offer another leader who is feeling maybe unseen or maybe questioning their influence and impact in a ministry?
Yeah, you know what's so funny is like we're here at the end of June, and summer can feel sometimes like the most draining time as a kids ministry leader, right?
Hmm.
You've been serving throughout a whole school year. Um, Attendance in summers always tends to be down because people are on vacation. You'll have kids who would rather be outside than necessarily in the room, listening to what you have to say, and it can really start to, I don't know, it just feels sort of draining, and we can wonder why are we even doing this? Like I feel like my passion is fizzling out. And I think we just continue to look at each other and say, God says that you matter. What you do matters. Every single week that you say yes to serving Him in preschool and kids ministry, every single time you show up and you share the love of God with people, it matters and you are making a difference. And you may never see the fruit of what you're doing. We talk all the time in kids ministry about how so many of the baptisms we see in student ministry, we're like, we deserve some of that credit, right? Like we've been laying that foundation since that kid was 2 years old. We went through the terrible twos, we went through the craziness, we went through all of that, and we served month after month, year after year. And it's like then they get into student ministry and they're all serious about their faith, and we're like, what? But instead of at all feeling jealous, we should be encouraged and say, all of that sowing of those seeds really, really mattered. And what I am doing matters to these kids and it matters to God as well. And so really just continuing to remind each other of why we do what we do, and that God has called us to this because He is the one that made us in this way, I think is really encouraging that we can do for each other in this season.
That's such a great reminder because I think, especially as they're looking at that impact, sometimes they're like, ah, what I do isn't important. And like you
Mm,
said, sometimes we are sowing the seeds, but also sometimes they're like, maybe I'm not cut out for this. I think one thing that, as we've looked at this entire month as a whole, of God made me valuable, talented, He made me on purpose, He made me original. Those are great reminders for our leaders as well. As we look
mhm,
at their talents, maybe finding the place where they're not just filling a need, but they're actually filling a mission, I think is going to be
mm,
really important. As we
mhm,
look at, hey, you're valuable. Sometimes they need to be reminded that they're valuable. So take a few extra seconds to just encourage that leader as you pass them in the hall, or say, or give a specific example of something that they did, like, hey, I saw you really greet that first time family, thank you so much for taking time to do that. Or, ooh, I saw that so and so was having a really hard time this morning, thank you for just giving them a little extra attention. Showing them that they are valuable not just in the mission of making
mhm,
disciples, but also in the
mhm.
mission of a Sunday morning, is also so valuable for them as a leader as well. Well, this week, we hope that you have an absolutely amazing time as you go in and you talk to these kids, to these preschoolers, and you tell them that God says you matter. This is a truth that we want them not only to hold until they go to sleep on Sunday night or Wednesday night, not
Mhm.
just to hold through this week, but we want them to carry through the rest of their life. Something that they can remember, that God says that they matter. Well, next week, I want to jump a little bit ahead. I know you still have a whole week of planning and prep, but I want to give you a little heads up of what's coming up next, because next week we are going to be talking about the truth of God cares when I hurt for preschool and I am broken for kids. So, as we talk about brokenness, we want to talk about how we have all sinned, we have all fallen short, but we also want to share the excitement, not that they are broken, but that we follow a God who is willing to make us whole and forgive us
Mm.
because He loves us and because He cares when we hurt. So that is something exciting to look forward to in the next month. But until then, we will talk to you later. Bye.